Hello everyone, today I'm gonna talk about PC parts. So what PC parts you should get for your newer rig. Well, let's start things off with the motherboard. Well, the motherboard is something very important. So if you're gonna get a higher end CPU and a higher end GPU, definitely go for a higher end motherboard. Okay, don't cheap out on that item so much. Okay, it seems like okay, we'll not have any problems whatsoever and blah blah blah, but yeah, maybe you're gonna have problems. Maybe your CPU and your GPU will not work as you expected. So that's something you don't want. Other thing that's important about motherboards is because motherboards sometimes they can be very nice overclockers, and other times they might not be as good. So you want to avoid motherboards that are not very good for overclocks if you're playing overclock in the future. Okay, so let's start things with real life examples. So let's say like you get an i5 with a K by the end of this the name of that CPU. For example, i5 4690K. Okay, so what that K means? It means it can be overclocked. And then you think, okay, my CPU can overclock, so I'll just overclock it. Okay, so yeah, not so fast, man. Like first you have to check your motherboard. Okay, but let's not dwell so much on that. What all I can say right now is that your motherboard, if it's a very cheap motherboard, will not handle overclocks very well. Okay, and what will happen? System crashes. You're not gonna get the maximum overclock you can get. It's gonna be just total mess. So you don't want that for your system. You want to avoid mess on your systems. Um, Other thing is important about so like moving on to CPUs. Okay, so other thing important about CPUs is it's not because CPU has some kind of, let's say, like a video processor integrated with it. Okay, it doesn't mean you're gonna have a bump on your games. Okay, so sometimes I don't know, like people might think that okay, I have one CPU that has a video card integrated in it, and then you think well, that's great, so I'll just like cheap out on your GPU and get a very nice CPU and it will be all fine. I'm sorry to tell you, but no, that's not gonna be totally fine. It's gonna be a little messy too. And let me explain why. Let's say that you get a nice processor, and then you pair up with a cheap GPU, and then you go gaming. What will happen? Well, basically, who tells you how many frames per second you're gonna have? It's your GPU and not your CPU alone. So, in other words, let's say that you have uh, an i7 4790K with a GTX 750 Ti. Will you get hell of performance from it? No, you're not gonna get top performance with it. Totally not. What will happen? Well, uh, your GPU will suffer, like will struggle to keep up with your CPU, and what will happen? It will reflect in frame rates and not good frame rates. Okay, like if you were like bearing in mind that you have an i7, it's not gonna be good at all. So what do you have to do? You have to get a nice GPU with a nice CPU. So let's say, like for example, again, you have the i7. Well, with an i7 4790K, you can go all the way up to like you can go crazy with a video card, no problem. You can go for SLI configuration, crossfire configuration. That's not gonna be a problem for this system. Okay, of course, if you have a nice motherboard too. Okay, especially if you're gonna go for SLI configurations, like your motherboard will have to be very good. But the good part about the motherboard and SLI configurations is usually if the motherboard offers SLI configuration or crossfire configuration, that's probably a very nice motherboard. So you don't have to worry so much with it right now. Okay, so let's move on. If you get lit, and let's do the other way around. Like, what will happen if I get a very cheap CPU with a top end video card? Well, the video card will handle most of the graphics. So yeah, fuck it. I'll get like a very cheap CPU and a very expensive GPU, and I'll be fine. No, you're not gonna be fine. Why? Because your GPU will be running uh, like crippled by the CPU, because the GPU can offer more calculations, more processing, and something like if you have a very cheap CPU will not handle very well. So let's get real life examples. So let's say you get an i7, no, I'm sorry, an i3, and then you pair up with GTX 9080. What will happen? Well, let's put in real world examples. So let's say you get like the minimum, your low was going to be like 20 frames per second, your average is going to be 40 frames per second, and your top frames per second is going to be 60, right? And now let's change the i3 with a can be an i7 or an i5 or FX 8320 or FX 8350. Okay, so like you get one of those processors, and you pair up with the GTX 9080 from NVIDIA. So what will happen? Instead of having the low around 20, your low is gonna be, believe me, around 50. Your average is gonna be around 60, and your maximum frames per second is gonna dwell around, I don't know, maybe 70 frames per second or 65 frames per second. So that's something you have to keep in mind. If you're gonna get a very nice GPU, you have to get at least a mid-range CPU. At least, guys, okay? Um, and I'm considering here 8320 and 8350 as mid-range CPUs. Okay, they are not high-end CPUs. High-end CPUs are definitely i7s. Okay, but if you're just gaming, you don't need i7s. You don't need i7s. Why you don't need i7s? Because the i7 from, for example, it costs around like to from $300 to $400. Okay, I'm just getting this thing from the top of my head. I don't have the price right now, but I believe that's the average of prices that you will find for i7s. Okay, and the i5 is literally half of this price. Okay, you can get i5s for $200. $200. You can get your i5s, and in performance is gonna be basically the same thing, the very same thing. Okay, like maybe like 2 or 3 frames per second as a difference, but technically it doesn't count as a difference because that's in the average. That's in the range of errors that you can get, like the difference, like the that's normal. Like to have like 2 or 3 frames per second difference, that doesn't represent exactly performance. It only represents uh, some uh, safety margin that you can have. Let's put it this way. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is, if you want to upgrade anything in your system, upgrade your GPU. Don't upgrade your CPU if you're planning to upgrade it. Why is that? The chances when you're gonna get an upgrade on your CPU, the chances that socket that I talked to previously will have changed it, right? And what does it mean? Like it means you basically will have to change your motherboard as well. So instead of changing only one product, you will have to change 2 products inside your CPU, and that's not something that you want, right? Like you want to upgrade your system, but you don't want to spend so much money as well, right? You want to keep things uh, within some reasonable thinking. Okay, so if you plan to upgrade, believe me, get a nicer CPU with a lower end GPU. Okay, and then if you don't have much money to have higher ends of both sides, just cheap out a little bit on your GPU. I'm sorry, GPU, and then in the future you just change your GPU, and your system will have different performance. Okay, and also bear in mind it's not worth it. Let's say like to change from GTX 750 Ti to a GTX 760 is virtually very close performance. Okay, it's a little difference. Yes, it is, but is it like a hell of difference? No, it's not. So if you plan to upgrade, try to get at least skip one model of let's say like you have 50 Ti, 750 Ti, and then you skip the 760 and go for the 770, or like today's case is the 970. Okay, the 970 is the sweet spot for video cards. If you're gaming on 1080p, and if you want to get you want to play at ultra settings and still get very good frame rates, 970 is the video card you want in your system. From AMD, I'd say like maybe a 280 or 285 or 290 would be like a nice video cards as well. Okay, and again, like you would be going from R7 260 X to a 280X. Okay, so you always skip one and go for the next one. Okay, I think that's some reasonable thinking that you can have. Okay, guys, so that's it. I want to tell you. I hope that you guys liked this video. I hope that you understood what I just said. If you have any problems, if you have any comments, just let me know. Just leave your comment down below. I'll respond to all of them, or at least I'll try to. Subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more videos like that. Okay, I'll be posting videos on power supplies, especially videos only about GPUs, videos only about CPUs. I'll also review some games. So please subscribe to my channel. I'll have like very nice things coming up. Okay, so that's it. Okay, peace.